Hello, my friends. Welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, and today I'm joined by esteemed guest, special guest, co-host, my dad, to discuss an interesting subject, an interesting topic, and interesting concept that we've got today: live albums with a problem. So these are live albums that we like. They're not bad live albums, but there's a catch, something that doesn't quite sit right with us. So, bit of a different idea, I know, but we'll kick off. Do you want to kick off with your first live
Yeah, sure.
choice?
Yeah. Okay, George. Yeah, nice one.
What you got?
Okay, first one is an album by a band very dear to me, 1984. Um, this album was released late in that year. It was produced by the band and a guy called Simon Hanhart, who had been a sound tech for the band. I'm talking about this little beauty here. Now, if you can see that, I'm talking about the mighty Marillion
Very
and
nice.
the Reel to Reel album from, as I say, 1984. I've also got over here a CD and I've also got a cassette. So I've got the full format here. Now, the reason I include this in the kind of slightly problematic area is that what happened way back in 1984 was that Marillion came up with their second studio album, Fugazi, which is a brilliant masterpiece of an album, but it kind of it failed to do what the record company wanted, which was, in other words, to sell millions and millions of copies. But it did very well. It entered the charts at number 5, I think it was. It was immediately gold. It was 2 top 30 hit singles. It was a great success, but it
That's
wasn't good
pretty
enough
good.
for EMI. It was pretty good, but it wasn't good enough for EMI. So they wanted to get something out quickly to keep the band's profile high after the kind of ridiculously high height of the period immediately sort of post the first album.
Yeah.
So they came up with this, Reel to Reel. Now, this was a single album at the time. It was released and it was kind of given a sort of a budget price point. It was chucked out.
Mm.
I think it sold for, I was working in music retail at the time. I think it sold for $2.99 as opposed to like $4.99, which was the price point.
Wow.
So it was cheap. It was cheap. It was cheerful. It was a single album. You know, as I say, because they wanted to keep the profile up.
Yeah. The
But
stopgap.
exactly. But you know, amongst all this mayhem about this album, the fact it was chucked out, it actually had a really good cover. A really good cover. Reel to Reel. I mean, for us old enough to remember, you know, go back to the days of tape. So you go Reel to Reel. And this, of course, was the classic lineup of the band, you know, Fish, Steve Rothery, Pete Travis, Ian Mosley, and Mark Kelly, the absolute pinnacle of this band, the neo-prog gods. Now, um, so amongst all this mayhem that was going on, the record company weren't liking them. They were just kind of all over the place. There was even rumours that they would chuck in a clause to drop the band. Mental, as it proved to be a good decision not to drop the band after what happened
Wow.
subsequently, of course. You know, mega platinum festival headlining, arena headlining giants that they became. But in amongst all this, brilliant live album. That's all you can say. Brilliant live album. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
They what Marillion were one of these bands. Well, I say one of these bands, the only band really like this that could just do this stuff. They came up with this album, like I say, amongst all this nonsense, and the tracks on there. It kicks off with Assassin from Fugazi, storming top 30 hit. Everybody loved it. Followed up by Incubus, possibly the for me anyway, a top 10 Marillion song, again off Fugazi. And then to finish the Fugazi segment of this album, Cinderella Search, which, come on, I mean, it's just such a fantastic song. It's ridiculously good. The whole band was so kind of on fire at the time as well. Bearing in mind they were only 2 albums into their career, but they were just so on fire, particularly live. They were just nailing it every night. It was recorded, I believe, Leicester de Montfort Hall and some tour dates in Canada, Montreal, I believe, opened up for Rush. So that was the first side. Then the second side, we go into the script of a Jester's Tears segment of it, which was Forgotten Sons and Garden Party, just Marillion classics. I mean, absolutely. I mean, they're going to love them every minute. And they finish it all off with Market Square Heroes, which of course was their first single. And this version is so rampaging and heavy. And if you compare it to the single, the actual first single, which it's different song, totally different song.
Yeah.
The whole thing is crazy rocking nonsense, Marillion progressive rock insanity. But
good.
It all works, and that's all you need to know. It's, also even the cover. I mean, I suspect that at the time the cover was kind of just chucked out there, but it just works. It's very much them. There it is. Like
I think it looks good. I think it's a cool cover.
It does look good, doesn't it? And something I mentioned, I do want to just mention this actually, because it's something I spoke to George about yesterday, is that back in the day, they had a little bit of some of the record companies had a little bit of a laugh with what we used to call catalogue numbers back in the day, when you had actual, I'm not sure if it still quite works like that, but this one was really good. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if it will pick it up there, but the catalogue number for the tape is TC Jest 1. Now, for Marillion fans, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because it was all about the Jester, and the Jester was their logo and all that stuff. So we had TC Jest 1, and the album, the vinyl, was just straightforward good old Jest 1, obviously. But yeah, really good, amazing album, out of a little bit of turmoil within the band's history. Just that moment, that tipping point of, are they actually going to sustain this, or is it all going to go toilet first? Thank goodness that the record company stuck with them, because obviously they made millions and billions of quid out of what happened subsequently. Misplaced child, the rest of it, we know all that. So there you go. But if anybody out there really wants to look into Marillion, please do check this out, because this is such a little gem. I doubt if it cost you $2.99 now, but you never know. It might do.
Yeah, I think even a second-hand copy of the CD,
even a second-hand copy.
So yeah, so wow, that's cool. That is cool. There's interesting that the label were actually going to drop them because they weren't making them enough money. That is weird.
Well, that was the rumor around at the time. That's I was working, as I said, I was working in music retail at the time, and I do remember somebody saying, and because they were, looking at, putting a clause in to say, look, it's not quite good enough, lads. Sorry, a top 6 entry into the charts, plus a gold disc on the day of release, because obviously that's how it works in advanced sales. Plus 2 top 30 singles isn't quite good enough. Well,
that's not bad.
Whatever you like, I don't know. It's to me that seems a little bit harsh, because there were a lot of record labels and a lot of bands, a lot of management around that would have taken that in a heartbeat. But there you go. Hey,
well, that's an interesting choice.
It is.
All right, so
go for it.
My choice, AC/DC Live. So this is the live album. I think it was recorded or released on the Razor's Edge tour, and I think it was 1992. To be honest, this version that I have of the album is a great live album, because we've got 2 discs there, incorporating just so many hits, so many classic tracks. Opens up with tracks like Thunderstruck, very catchy, very memorable rocking track. Got some great Back in Black era stuff with Shoot to Thrill and the title track there. We've got Who Made Who, a bit of a strange release of like a film soundtrack. Elsewhere, more good tracks. The Razor's Edge, got Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, Hell's Bells, High Voltage. We've got some good stuff. The problem being that although this is effectively just a live greatest hits, is that it strays into the over self-indulgent territory where we end up with things like a 10-minute long version of High Voltage, complete with medleys and noodling around from Angus. We get a 12-minute version of Let There Be Rock, which we just don't need that. Keep it concise. 7-minute plus version of For Those About to Rock. Nearly 7-minute version of The Jack. But the real crowning moment here is we get a 14-minute, 43-second version of Jailbreak. The whole sort of, self-indulgent, they're getting carried away with all these solos and just messing around, really. It completely derails the momentum of the album. What you want is hit, hit, hit. You just want to keep the pace going. This is not really, although it's a great live album, it's not the sort of album that you can put on and just rock out to.
I completely agree with you. And the thing is, they're kind of at that stage when they decided that was a good idea to do all those, as you say, those extended versions of it. They were kind of almost looking back a couple of decades actually prior to that, actually, because the extended solo and the extended version, if you like, was very much a kind of trait of the 70s. It was all over the place then. I mean, I grew up then, and I grew up listening to all those great albums, but they were just full of extended versions, drum solos, and great though they were, actually, you know what, especially with a band like AC/DC, because it's a rock and roll band, it's a dance band. We want to get up there and have a little listen, tap your foot. I don't necessarily want to sort of, do you know what I mean? So I completely get that totally, and just don't bother. But I always say to you, I'd like to have been in that meeting when they decided that was a good idea. But the trouble is, when you're dealing with people like that, with that amount of baggage, they can't say no to it because they've decided it's a great idea. A 14-minute version of
Jailbreak.
Jailbreak. Seems like a good idea to the band because I'm sure they really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Come on, what about the rest of us? Let's squeeze another couple of songs in there. Let's do it.
That's the thing. You've got all these, got 2 discs. You've got 23 tracks in total there, and I think if they had just condensed some of these things, don't need that 14-minute version of Jailbreak. You don't need the 10-minute High Voltage. Chop that, and let's have a few more classic tracks in there.
Completely
so a few more the hits.
Completely agree. Yeah,
it would make so much more
sense.
Wouldn't
you? And why wouldn't you? Because it's not going to cost you a cent more to do that. And in fact, you might even find that you sell a few more copies if you don't do that. Let's have a bit more. Is AC/DC at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is not a jazz fusion, ensemble. It's AC/DC. It's head banging music, isn't it? So allow me to bang my head a little bit more for my money, please, because I like it. That's what it's all about.
They're one of the most reliable rock and roll bands. So consistent.
AC/DC, Whoa, the Stones. Come on. I want to know what I'm going to hear here.
Yes.
And let's do it.
And I'll be happy about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll walk away a happy man. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's my first choice.
Well, it's a good choice. It's a point very well made, I have to say. Okay.
Glad you agree.
Right. Over to me, is it?
Yeah, over to you.
Well, that's good, my son. Right. By the way, I know it's Sunday, George, but Hey, what the hell? Whitstable Bay.
Yeah.
Walls.
Yeah, it's all right when you haven't got work, but
Well,
rubbing it in.
I'm a very old man now, George. I nearly said Bert then. Right, okay, fine. Okay, the next album I want to talk about
Yeah.
in this category of albums that have a certain amount of issues with them as far as
Yeah.
we are concerned anyway. Right, now this
Yeah.
one is from 1978. It's from a very beloved band of mine. It's one of those albums that just contains those versions of songs that are simply definitive. I'm talking about Some Enchanted Evening. I should get this the right way around. From my very beloved Blue Oyster Cult. Okay, so there's the vinyl that I got. There's the back cover there. And I got somewhere I've got, which I can't immediately put my hands on this, I can. I also have a CD version thereof. Okay, now this album has been with me for a very, very long time. 1978 release, Columbia Records. One at the time, they were at the very peak of their popularity and their artistic success. This is a very unusual band. Anybody who's into them will know that they are not. What annoyed me actually in some ways is that they very often got thrown in with the kind of the arena bands that were very successful at the time. And no disrespect to them because they're bands I love. Bands like Foreigner and Styx, Journey, Blue Oyster Cult had nothing to do with that. Nothing whatsoever to do with that scene at all. They were a totally unique band. I've always loved them since I first heard them, which was around about this time this got released, when I was a mere 14 or 15 year old. Believe it or not, I was one once. But anyway, I know. But you know, they were always so very, very different, and there's just one of those bands who are incredibly difficult to put in a little category. You can't say they're a heavy metal band. Blue Oyster Cult a heavy metal band. They're just a heavy rock band who are a bit weird and a bit out there, and it's all over here and over there. A bit like Jethro Tull. You can't slot them in. But anyway, the reason I mention this album in this episode that we're talking about here is that it contains 7 tracks, just a mere 7 tracks. Okay, 5 of which are Blue Oyster Cult originals, and they are absolutely definitive versions of those songs. No question. You know, we're talking about Are You Ready to Rock, which opens the whole thing up, from Spectre's fantastic song. ETI from Agents of Fortune, absolutely brilliant, you know, totally mental. Astronomy, where they reach back to Secret Treaties, you know. Come on. I mean, Kick Out the Jams, they drop in, which is a cover version, and this is where I'm getting to here, of an MC5 classic. I say classic, but come on, sort of proto-punk nonsense, really, as far as I'm concerned. Then we go to Godzilla. Sabbath riffing, heavy style. That was just their best song in terms of sort of the heavy riffing thing. And then we get Don't Fear the Reaper, which is a great version of it. And then we go to We Got to Get Out of This Place, okay? So which is another cover version of Animals. So the problem I've got is that you at this time, the band were at the peak of their commercial success. They come up with a live album, which is, first of all, it's a single live album, which in itself is a crime, because this is a band who were 5 studio albums into their recordings career. You know, so there's plenty of scope and opportunity to chuck more stuff in there. And yet they give us 5 songs and they give us 2 cover versions. Why? I do not know. And from what I've read and researched about the album, there's a couple of things to say. First of all, apparently the band didn't want the single album. They wanted an expanded double album. Because
who wouldn't want that?
Also worth mentioning that they'd already done a double live album, 2 studio albums prior to that. So they had plenty of material. So all of a sudden, we've got this single album comes out, and they moaned about it apparently, but obviously the record company has the full sway.
Yeah.
And the record company proved to be right, because it went on to become their biggest selling album. It was a platinum album. It did huge business, and everybody was very happy with it. So, what can you say? But from a fan's point of view, no, not really. I haven't actually got a copy myself of the expanded edition, but now apparently you can go and buy what is effectively a double album version of this.
Oh, really?
So maybe all those years ago, if they'd just done that in the first place, I don't know. Who knows how these people work? But nevertheless, it's a fantastic album, and I would, again, like I said about the Marillion album, I think, if anybody wants to put their toe in the water as far as Blue Oyster Cult are concerned, because they're not everybody's cup of tea. I do understand they are quite a tricky band to deal with in terms of, because you get a lot of different flavors and different stuff all the time. So you're not just going to, well, you were talking about AC/DC just then, so the very antithesis of AC/DC and Blue Oyster Cult is, there's no point in putting the Blue Oyster Cult album on. I think you're just going to bang your head all it. Or indeed, just take loads of drugs, and because you're going to get a bit of all that. There's drug taking music and there's headbanging music, which we like actually. I quite like that actually, because what can be better than taking drugs early in the evening and then banging your head later in the evening? Or maybe that's just right. I don't know. But anyway, so we go with that. And if you want to put your toe in the water, a little bit of Blue Oyster Cult, go with that. And you will know those songs, but you might also learn something. So take it from me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right. It's a fantastic live album. I agree.
It is.
Like you say, could have been more.
Could have been more.
So, my next choice, going with one of the most reliable, one of the vanguards of heavy metal, the metal gods, talking Judas Priest. And this album, A Touch of Evil Live, this was released, when was this released actually? It was released in 2009. It's a great live album. The tracks are pretty consistent. We've got 11 tracks in total. We've got 2 tracks from Angel of Retribution with Judas Rising and Hell Rider. Really great, proper heavy metal tracks, right at the very upper end of heavy metal, where it's not new album anymore. This is heavy, fast, speed metal stuff. And we've got Between the Hammer and the Anvil, great track, one of those painkiller moments there. Got tracks like Riding on the Wind, we've got a classic there. Decident Aggressor, another great track. Beyond the Realms of Death, great version of that Stained Class classic. Got a couple of tracks from Nostradamus. Got Death, which is a Sabbath-esque doom masterpiece, brilliant track. We've got Prophecy elsewhere. So we've got a lot of more recent material. We've got Painkiller and A Touch of Evil from Painkiller album. But the problem, well, there's a few problems. We'll start with the first notable problem, is that you've got 11 tracks. And this is recorded on 2 tours, 2005 and 2008. They had more than enough material by that point to give us a nice double live album. Unleashed in the East was only a single. They did have Priest Live, which was a double. So we know that they can do a double live album. And it would have been good to have a double live album at this point, after Halford was back in the band and they were firmly on track again. Although Nostradamus is not everyone's cup of tea, as it's a massive, sprawling epic. But like I said to you yesterday, you can't listen to Nostradamus expecting to hear British Steel or Stained Class. Totally different time, totally different album. But understand, a lot of people just can't get on with that album. That's fine. So album length-wise, could definitely have been longer. The second big issue, as I alluded to there, It's recorded across 2 tours, 2005 and 2008, world tours. Now, why? Why 2 tours? They've got some of the, obviously they've got some of the Angel of Retribution material, and then we've got Nostradamus material. So this is in fact starting to get onto the live compilation territory rather than an authentic live album. And we've also got almost a complete absence of any sort of inter-crowd interaction. You know, there's no talk between songs. It's just live versions of these songs. So it does not have the appeal or the magic of a live album. Not like Live After Death or even Priest Live. You know, these classic live albums where it's the full package, and it has it all. It's got the inter-crowd play. We've got great tracks. So the problems are frequent here. We've got it's way too short, and also it's far too, you know, it's Judas Priest. They had so many classic albums by that point: Killing Machine, Stained Class, British Steel, Screaming for Vengeance. They are so underrepresented on this live album. It's all the majority of it is made up across Nostradamus, Angel of Retribution, and Painkiller. So really, this album, although the live versions here, they do sound great. The quality of it's great. Halford sounds brilliant. You know, the band sounds heavy, but it's got so much missing. There's so much missing. It's missing the magic. It's missing the material. It's almost. It has that kind of feel of a bit of a contractual obligation release. You know, we need to get something out there. Like you mentioned, Marillion there. We've got to get something out there. We'll just stick a load of, we've got some recorded live material. We'll just stick that out there. It's a bit of a stop.
I do think, you know, and I completely agree with you there, but I do think as well that, you know, whoever is responsible for these things, these albums coming out, be it the producers, be it the band, be it the record companies, whatever, I do think that they totally, utterly miss the point sometimes of, you know, what the live album is about. I mean, we had a laugh the other day. We were talking about the fact that, you know, there are a certain amount of so-called live albums out there, which they try to double up as being greatest hits. Like, I mean, it's a horrible concept we spoke about. But you know, it's just a mere sort of lack of it, of kind of just leaving the crowd noise in. Just leave it in. I mean, I mentioned to you the other day, you know, Rush Exit Stage Left is a classic example of that. I mean, it's a great live album. You know, it's a legendary live double album, but they just keep fading it out. Every track they fade out after the song, and then they fade it back in again. Why do you do that? Why would you decide that that's a good idea? Because we all know that the idea of the live album, I would imagine, is to go home, stick it on in your bedroom, and you close your eyes. You imagine you're watching whoever it happens to be, Judas Priest, whoever it happens to be, on stage. Don't keep fading it out, because that doesn't happen. The last time I went to a gig, it didn't all vanish in the middle of between songs. You know, normally it's somebody trying to barge past me to get to the toilet, or bearing in mind my age, usually halfway through the song, actually trying to push past me to go to the toilet. You know, that's usually me actually doing that to my son. But you know, it doesn't it seem a bit odd to you that they would decide that's a good idea? I think there's some lot of weird stuff goes on with people. I think they're just trying to be a bit different. They say, oh no, tell you what. Do you remember that Iron Maiden live album? Yeah, but you could hear the crowd all the way through it. Tell you what, we're not going to do that. We're going to get the crowd noise.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
No one wants to hear the crowd.
There's a particularly Maiden, you know, or you know what I mean? It's just like, please don't do that to me. I don't want to hear it. So just leave it as it is. It's a live album, believe it or not. You know.
So I mean, it says "Touch of Evil" live.
Exactly.
It just doesn't have, like I say, you know. It is good. The material is good, but it just doesn't have the feel of a live.
Also, of course, the cover there as well is, you know, okay, fine. I get it. It says live, but you know, I want photos. I want live shots. I want stuff like that. or I
Yeah,
want
you want.
starkness as well. I like that as well. Starkness is good with live albums. It's like
Yeah,
stamp. Stamp. This is going to happen now.
yeah,
You look back. Well, you can't because you're too young. If I reach back into the '70s and look at that dozen classic live albums, Live and Dangerous and Made in Japan and Made in Europe, all those albums,
yeah,
live shots. They may not
yeah.
some of them weren't that great actually, to be quite honest with you, they weren't that great, but they were a live shot. That's what I
Oh,
want
yeah.
because I want to see a band on stage. I want to see that. I
Mm,
want to see that photograph of that band on stage, and I want to see that. It didn't
mm.
always happen like that, but come on. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. I could say, uh,
Unleashed in the East.
I could do, yeah. What a great live shot that is. So I could say, what
Yeah,
about No Sleeping with Hammersmith? But then equally,
brilliant.
I could say, equally, I could turn that around and say, well, come on, Eagles Landed.
Yeah,
Don't see live shots on the front of that. But
no,
yeah,
certainly
okay, yeah, what
Star.
the hell, who cares? But it's like I want it. I want that starkness as well. I want that. Don't
Yeah,
come up with a completely weird concept of just more artwork. It's a
yeah,
live album. Come on.
it is.
Interestingly enough, actually, with the Priest live, the
Mm,
double that they came up with back in the late '80s, I think. With that, you probably got it somewhere. I'm sure you have. But
yeah,
they did that. They tried to make that look like a bootleg, didn't they? That kind of
yeah,
weird. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's like this. Oh, let's make it look like a bootleg. Because it's like a drawing. If I remember.
yeah,
I mean, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, look, Priest like so it was like made it look like some little Spod had done it in his bedroom. He's like
yeah.
drawn the cover and stuff like that. Yeah, it
A
could have
little
been
bit,
better, couldn't it? I kind of
a little
understand
bit.
what they were thinking, but equally, don't do that. Actually, tell you what, don't do that. Actually,
Yeah,
don't bother with that. Just put a live photo.
yeah.
Do you know what? I tell you, interesting. Because
Mm,
there's quite a lot of sort of synergy, if that's the right word, between Kiss and Priest, and
yeah,
Kiss never seemed to have a problem. I mean, how unbelievable is the photograph on the front of the first Alive album?
yeah.
It may not
Kiss
be an
Alive.
actual live shot, but does that not say to you, this is a live album?
Yeah,
The mere
this is
fact that it's
heavy.
called Alive, but we'll
Yeah,
ignore that. Just look at this cover. Imagine it's got
yeah,
nothing on it. And say, how amazing. Indeed, the second live album, I mean, come on, the little pictures at the bottom there and all the
yeah.
stuff on the back. Brilliant.
It works.
That, and now, Kiss the Priest, for me personally, is only going to be one winner. But I
Yeah.
have to say, as a Kiss fan, I like it. I like that fact they did that. They made it very, very clear what was going on.
Yeah.
And I like
Whereas
it.
something like that, it's nondescript. Again, just
Now
like the
my
brief.
son is just showing off to me now because he's got a copy of that on vinyl. Yeah,
I've got a cassette as
that
well
is
somewhere.
another great effort. It's the same kind of thing, is it, as the Priest,
Yeah,
isn't it? And you've got a
exactly.
shitload of photos in there. You've got tons of stuff in there. I do get that. I absolutely. So yeah, okay. I back off on that one, but you kind of know what I mean, don't you?
Yeah.
We want a flavour of it, don't we? You really should have a live shot. Ideally, you want
Hmm.
that, don't you? But then again, you throw a spanner in the works because you showed me live bootleg, which
Yeah.
is a great live album and it's got a great cut. It is a great cover, but it doesn't. But then it kind of relates to the title of it and the coffee cup stains and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I mentioned when it comes to talking about live album covers, particularly
Mhm.
the amazing live double album, which of course was the signature of the 1970s. You know,
Yeah.
you need to look no further than Ted Nugent double live Gonzo, which is just got the best cover. Now I don't know whether you've seen that cover, but if
I
you
think I
haven't,
have.
you need to look at it and just understand what the hell that's going on. It is an amazing cover, actually. And it's a great album as well, of course. Let's not forget that. I mean, it's a brilliant album, but it's a
Mm.
great cover. And the interesting thing about that album as well is that Ted's nemesis was always Sammy Hagar, because they were always kind of like, they were these two kind of like, they used to be locked horns, they were like
Yeah.
kind of in the late 70s, early 80s, these were these two kind of slightly odd dudes that were kind of ruling the roost over there. And it turns out actually that they were actually great friends. I don't know whether you've ever seen that rock and roll road trip that Sammy Hagar's doing on YouTube, but he spent like the weekend with Ted Nugent, and it's just so weird. It's like they live in the same street, and it's like that's a bit weird. But anyway, the reason I mentioned Sammy as well, because Sammy also had an album, a live album, which I think you've got a copy of, Live Loud and Clear, vinyl.
Yep.
And again, it's got that very, very similar thing with Sammy kind of like diving onto his knees and clutching his head because it's so loud and so clear. It reminds me of being a very young man. Yeah, that is exactly it. It's definitely in the same ballpark. Very close up. There's Sammy. It's Ted, on the other hand, has got his SG kind of, not his SG. I can't think what it is. It's a Gibson, but I can't think what they call it now. But it's like almost round his throat. But it's very, very similar.
Yeah,
That's another great album. Actually, that is. I can't actually think of too many. Oh wow, Red. Wow.
Very nice.
And of course, Sammy's, that was his thing, wasn't it? Red.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, I'm extremely jealous now. Yeah. I may have to abduct you now too. But,
that's it.
Yeah, but those kind of covers, you look at, just hold it up again. Oh, whoa, man, come on! I nearly forgot.
Talk about covers.
Talk about covers of live albums that kind of throw out that this is a live album. I mean, come on, give me that. Rudolph Schenker breaking his spinal column there for that.
It's those boots. It's those boots.
I know. That is amazing. Not only is it amazing cover, it was an amazing album as well, actually.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Actually, it's interesting because that album has no place in this there's a problem category, because it doesn't have a problem, because it's a double, it's got amazing artwork, there's not a bad track on it, and it's got so much. I know we're going a little bit off track here, but that has got so much Uli John Roth on there doing his insane guitar playing,
absolutely mental.
Completely mental. But hey, who doesn't like a little bit of German mid-70s heavy proto metal insanity? Well,
yeah, exactly.
Because if you don't like it, then don't listen to this channel, folks. But no, it's amazing. That's amazing. It's very, and I'm equally slightly concerned that you've got a better copy than I have. And who's the governor?
It is very good. Yeah, that's fine.
That's good.
We'll quickly recap our
choices. Fair enough. Go for it. Right.
There we had it. Our live albums with a problem. I had AC/DC Live. The problem being that it's just way too self-indulgent there. And then Priest, Touch of Evil Live, because it's just not a live album in that regard.
It's just not that live. And I had Neo Prog Gods, Marillion, Reel to Reel. Completely ridiculously good album, issued under slightly odd circumstances, but as I must stress, check it out, please. Mm-hmm. Then I had uncategorizable, mental, just fuck knows what the hell they're all about. God's Rock, Blue Oyster Cult, Some Enchanted Evening, brilliant live album, but 7 tracks and 2 cover versions. So we leave that out, and then we've got the perfect album.
Yeah.
Artwork.
Again,
not a live shot. Interesting, not a live shot, but I think it kind of speaks a little bit of live. Mm. I like the fact as well, the back cover. Is a sort of a slightly lunar or Mars landscape, which is very Blue Oyster Cult, because they love all that space sci-fi.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what they're all about, and that's great. And I can imagine that meeting when they
Yeah.
decided that. I always say that to you, don't I?
Yeah.
That meeting, right, okay, what should we have? Hey, man, yeah, well, what about if we have a drawing on the front, but a real shot of like Mars on the back? Obviously, they wouldn't have said it like that because they're Americans, but
Yeah.
if they weren't, they would have said it like that.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Hawkwind. Hawkwind
Yeah.
was trying to decide on an album cover. Hey, man, which
Yeah.
picture? Well, hey, man.
What? It depends what
Yeah,
drugs are on
but
that
funnily
day.
enough, it always works. It does,
Yeah.
doesn't it? It always works. It's like, shit, I don't remember making the decision now.
Drugs help,
Exactly.
but drugs help for decisive decision making.
It is, isn't it? Very funny.
Our first co-host show. Interesting to hear anyone else's thoughts and opinions on any of our live choices there. Do you think they're good albums? Have they got a problem, or are we being unfair? Don't know. Be interesting. Let us know. Thanks very much for watching, and do check back soon for more reviews, recommendations, all the good stuff. Thank you, and take care.